we're going to talk about how to never again say that there is a dream that you have, there's something that you want to do, but you can't afford it, because that sucks. That sucks, and we're going to make sure that that sucky thing, that you feel like there's something that you want, there's a dream, you want to travel, you want to quit your job. Who wants to quit their job? All right, we're going to talk about how to make those things happen, because I know that whatever your goals are, whether it's that you want to travel, maybe it's like a personal goal, you want to travel to Iceland, you want to go to Hawaii, you want to buy a home, maybe you want to support your family, like your extended family, you want to help grandparents with their retirement, whatever it is, we're going to talk about how to make that happen. And I'll start by telling you a little bit of my own story. And we will climb into the Wayback Machine because I'm kind of old. But once upon a time, I was in college, and I really wanted to travel. And the study abroad programs at my school were prohibitively expensive. They were between $15,000 to $20,000 for a single semester. In fact, I purposely chose an image of the Great Pyramids because the cheapest program that my school offered was an exchange at American University in Cairo, and that was $15,000 for one semester. And that was the cheapest thing they offered. And there was no way that I could pay for that. I mean, I would have had to have taken out loans. Like I wasn't, as a college student, and especially one who didn't understand money, not happening. So I gave it some thought, and I realized I didn't actually want to study. I just wanted to go abroad. So, I was like, nope, I am not going to pay a whole bucket load of money for this thing that I could just do myself. And what that illustrates, is an example of not performing the script that's handed to us, not following some preordained, like, here's the normal way to do things. You go to high school, and then you go to college, and if you want to travel, you take a study abroad, and then you graduate, and then you work, maybe go to grad school, and then you work, and then you die. Let's, with the exception of the death part, let's switch up the order here, and do some different things in different orders, and think outside the box a little bit. And so a lot of how I tried to tackle this problem in my head was first to cut to the chase, to get to the heart of what I really wanted. What I wanted was to travel, to explore, to see the rest of the world. There are all of these countries that I had only read about in books. This is before YouTube, of course. I don't read books anymore. No, I'm just kidding. And I also, instead of saying, I can't, and that's when people say, I can't afford it, like you're leading with the word can't. And it's much more powerful to lead with, how can I? Because when every can't gets reframed as a how can, ideas start to unfold. Life begins to change. And you stumble upon solutions that are maybe a little bit less conventional, less standard, but way more fun. So I decided I was going to graduate, get a big kid job, save up some money, and go travel. And so I got my big kid job. This is 2005, and my starting salary was $21,000 a year. And when I quit that, sometimes when I say that, people are like, oh, are you talking like $1962? No, adjusted for inflation, that's like still pretty close to 21,000, maybe 25 in today's dollars or so. My highest salary that I ever earned working for somebody else happened in 2008 when I quit that job. And at the time that I quit that job, I was making $31,000 a year. That's the most I've ever made as someone else's employee. Despite the fact that I was earning in that range, I saved $25,000 during that 3-year time span from 2005 to 2008. And I did that through side hustling. So on average, I made about $800 a month. I mean, it wasn't perfect. It was like, some months more, some months less, the side hustle thing. But I averaged around $800 a month. After 3 years of consistent action, that came to $25,000. And I was like, woo, I've got like a year's worth of income saved. That's nuts. I think I'm gonna quit my job now. So I did. And so this is my friend Kim. She's one of my two best friends, Kim and Mo. If they're watching the YouTube video of this, hi. So my friend Kim and I decided that we were going to travel through the most expensive place that we could think of, which was Western Europe. So we go to Spain, and we try to do it we do it as cheaply as possible. So there's Kim sleeping on a camping mat on the floor of, I guess it's a bus terminal, because, you know, hey, it's a place to sleep. And we joined this program. It's Worldwide Workers on Organic Farms. And so we go to these different farms. That's Kim. She's obviously posing for the photo because nobody smiles like that while they're using a trowel. That is not a natural facial expression for that movement. So, but it's a cute picture, so I included it. So we went to this organic farm in Spain where, in exchange for hard manual labor in the sun, we got like a sandwich and a place to sleep. And this, by the way, was where we slept. We slept in this old RV. That thing gave both of us the most terrible case of head lice. And okay, you see this, right? And I know this is going to sound difficult to believe, but 12 years ago, when I was 12 years younger, my hair was even longer and even thicker than it is now. Like this, I go, like, you can tell that I've aged by how short my hair is now. I go home and my mom's like, you're old, yeah. So I'm glad that by the time we did this trip, I had quit my job, because if I hadn't, I would have needed to quit my job to manage my hair. Can't do both. I can't do both. So we're in Spain, quite literally scratching our heads trying to figure out what to do next. And I'm like, I gotta get out of Western Europe. I can't. Well, not I can't. How can I? You know, I'm gonna go somewhere else. And so I fly to Egypt on a one-way ticket. That's the bottom photo is in Egypt. So I fly to Cairo on a one-way ticket, and for the next 2 years, I travel through the Middle East, primarily through the Middle East and Southeast Asia. So I go to places where the dollar exchange rate really works in my favor. I go to Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Myanmar, and I travel very, very slowly. I spend, on average, about a month in every country that I go to, money goes a lot further. You know, there's some places where money goes a lot further than it does in others. And so I travel slowly. I develop efficiencies. I create friendships. You know, when the type of friendships that you can form when you're somewhere for a month that you can't form when you're somewhere for a few days. And that's what I discovered is one of the great quote unquote hacks of travel. It's not really a hack, it's just like, oh, truth. I guess we use the word hack for whatever. It's like the longer you stay somewhere, the cheaper, i.e. the more efficient it is, because you learn how to truly live there, to set some roots there. Even if you don't intend on being there permanently, you have a deeper, pardon the pun, richer, more connected experience. And as a ancillary benefit, it also happens to be more wallet friendly. So the thing is, this trip that I'm describing, which was life-changing, this was not just a vacation, this it changed everything about me. I wouldn't be on this stage had I not quit my job, done this trip, and I came up with the name Afford Anything while I was on the trip. You know, I came up with that concept because I wanted to show people that you can afford anything, not everything, but anything. And so if there is some dream that you have, it is within the realm of possibility for you. You just may need to get really creative and also have really low personal hygiene standards. So the reason that it almost didn't happen is because most of what I learned about money management, the traditional model, wasn't working for me. Because the traditional model assumes that you are like a responsible adult who can manage her own life. And I wouldn't go that far to describe myself, because the thing is, I'm really bad at details. I suck at details. Like, really. Okay, you know where I was at 2 p.m. today? I know there was a single speed dating event right here that I wanted to go to, but you know why I wasn't there? It's because I realized that I'm about to be on stage in front of 400 people, and I looked down, and as it turns out, I had shaved one leg, but not the other. So I had to go back to my hotel room to shave my left leg. And so I missed the speed dating, and so single dudes, if you're hot, come talk to me afterwards. Yes, I'm canvassing from the stage. Although I realize that by way of introduction, I have now told you about my head lice and my unshaved leg. So that's where we're at with that. All right, so anyway, back to me being terrible at details. I'm just like only chronologically an adult. I wouldn't say I have the habits of one. And so the traditional budget did not work for me, and that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time together. The traditional model, which if you are an adult enough that you can do it, props. But for people like me who cannot like detail our way out of a paper bag, here is the anti-approach. So let's talk about boring. Okay, traditional budgets. They're very detailed, arguably restrictive. I know some people are going to be like, but there's freedom and discipline. Okay, sure. But a traditional budget, I kind of think of it as the calorie counting of the financial world, because you have to be so meticulous and regimented about tracking every single calorie, every macro, knowing precisely where every dollar is going. I don't even know where the rest of this sentence is going. Like, how can I know all of that? And there's this zero-based budgeting, which we heard about earlier this morning. It's great for people who can stick to it. You know, if you have the ability to stick to it, again, more power to you. But I couldn't. I sure couldn't. So here's an example of what zero-based budgeting might look like. You know, where you start with your income, that's the top line, and then you of course, you pull your savings, you put that right up at the top, because duh. And then you work your way down from there, and then at the end, there's a plan for how you're gonna spend every dollar. Great, excellent. You know how many times I have gone into like MyFitnessPal or Lose It, like one of those food apps, and I've made a plan for what I'm gonna eat tomorrow, and then tomorrow comes, and I'm like pounding the chocolate cake. Yeah, it's that. And so the thing that worked for me, and hopefully for anyone who has a brain like mine, the thing that might work for you is what I call the anti-budget. The anti-budget is just a budget for people who hate budgets. And I liken it to the intuitive eating of personal finance. If traditional budgeting is calorie counting, anti-budgeting is intuitive eating. And in the anti-budget, you cut to the chase. And you kind of take that step back and say, wait, what's the point of a budget? The point is to make sure that you're saving enough, or that enough of your money is going towards the goals that you've set for yourself. So if that's the point, why not just cut to the chase, cut the fluff, go straight to that? So it reduces your money to really just two buckets: what you save and what you spend. And that's it. And between those two, you save first, and then you just chill out about everything else. So it's very big picture oriented, and after a while it becomes a little more intuitive. You don't have to be so detailed or regimented about it. And so the instructions for it are quite simple. Decide how much you want to save, pull that off the top, chill. Now, let's talk about what precisely we mean when we say the word save. So when I'm talking about savings in this context, I'm referring to anything that improves your net worth. So that might mean literal savings in a savings account, which is typically what people think of when they hear the word savings, but it could also mean 401k, 403b, IRA, HSA, the alphabet soup of tax-advantaged accounts. It could be saving in any of those. It could mean saving in a taxable brokerage account or investing money in a taxable brokerage account. It might mean making extra payments towards a debt, payments above and beyond what you are required to provide every month. I've gotten so many emails from people who say, hey, I wasn't able to save any money last year, but I paid off $10,000 worth of additional debt. And I'm like, well, you did save then, right? You made those extra debt payments. That's a form of savings because it improves your net worth. So anything that improves your net worth is savings, because at the end of the day, savings is deferred spending. So if you're not spending it and you're using it to enhance your net worth in any capacity, that's what we mean. So the anti-budget philosophy, hey, I already remembered to say that, look at that, is to make sure that you're saving enough, which is to say it is to make sure that your net worth is improving so far as your locus of control allows it to do so. Outside of your locus of control, there will be things. There will be market declines. There will be medical emergencies. That stuff is going to happen, and you can't exercise any control over it. But the purpose of a budget is to make sure that within what you can control, you're taking positive action every month to make sure that you're controlling the things that you can. And that ultimately is the point. And so when we get rid of the detailed, for those of us who are not good at details like me, when we get rid of the spreadsheets, when we get rid of the excruciating detail and we take a step back and say, what's the purpose? What's the point? All right, let's lean in that direction. Here's an example of what an anti-budget might look like. So again, we start with the income. We decide how much money we want to put towards various types of savings, retirement versus anything else. And then the everything else category, if the money is out of sight, out of mind, there will be, for most people, an intuitive adjustment. You know that the money that's left over, you have a pretty good sense of what you've got. And as long as the savings are taken care of first, then whatever is left over is sort of yours to feel out. One thing, one supplement to this, is what I refer to as batching. It's kind of the debt snowball of the savings world. And it's where if you have multiple savings goals, you pick one, focus everything on that, do it till it's done, and then move on to the next. And so with a batching technique, let's say that you can save $600 a month, but you've got 4 different goals, right? And your goals total $36,000, but you can only save $600 a month, and oh my goodness, it feels like you're never going to hit these goals. You could split your money up in different ways and make incremental progress to each of those 4 goals, and then you're going to slam your head into a wall because you're so frustrated because you're only making incremental progress. And that doesn't provide a psychological win, and it's totally frustrating, and nobody likes it, or at least I don't, so I'm going to stand here on stage and say that nobody does. But if instead you pick, and again, this borrows from that debt snowball technique, if you pick the smallest of the goals and then throw all of your savings towards that until it's done, then boom, you get a win right away. So if we were to do that with those examples, okay, let's say one of your goals is that you want to upgrade your phone and you can save $600 a month. Well, guess what? In less than 2 months, you've hit that goal. Now you have a victory. Now that victory motivates you to continue to save and to continue to hit the next cheapest goal and then the next and then the next until eventually you have the motivation and the habits and the automation. You have all that wonderful triangle of habit, motivation, you have it to be able to pursue bigger dreams. Habit, motivation, automation. A couple of, again, I call it hacks, but they're really just like techniques, tips, tactics. If you have particular problem spending areas, just stuff that you have a problem, it's the stuff you really can't get under control, going to cash only for those specific expenses can actually be pretty helpful. That doesn't mean you have to be cash only for every single thing in your life, but if there are just certain maybe restaurants, if you have a restaurant, if that's always the problem area, going to cash only for that, withdrawing all of that cash at the beginning of the month, and boom, that's what you've got for the month. I think that's another really good way to manage specifically those problem areas. And of course, the big three: housing, transportation, food. It's so common for people to overemphasize the small discretionary items that are salient, right? When we buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks, it's salient because we are physically there. Now that post-pandemic, we're physically there in a Starbucks. We are handing our money over to the barista. We're getting a hot mug of liquid in our hands. It's immediate, it's visceral, it's tangible, and as a result, we tend to overemphasize those expenses. And so when we think about how to save, we overemphasize the importance of something like that, and we underemphasize the things that statistically we spend the most amount of money on: housing, transportation, and food overall. Not just the Starbucks run, but food in general, right? Having cheaper housing is high friction. It's not a decision that we make daily. Like downsizing from a big house to a smaller house, or from a 3-bedroom apartment down to a 2-bedroom apartment, that is a high friction activity that is a huge pain to execute, but do it once and it pays dividends for years to come. But oftentimes we ignore those big wins in favor of these small items that capture our attention but don't actually move the needle. So, those are a couple of quote-unquote hacks, but I think in the spirit of the anti-budget, the thing I really like to emphasize is what I call the anti-hack, which is I can give you all of the tactics, the techniques, the whatevers, but you don't need more tactics. You don't. You're in a room full of people and you all have access to the internet. There's an endless supply of tactics out there. What you need is to keep your head in the game. And keeping your head in the game requires having a purpose. Because if you don't have a strong why, if there isn't a reason why you're saving, you're investing, you're learning about that alphabet soup of tax-advantaged accounts, if there isn't a good reason why you're bothering to do this, then you're not going to stay in it for the long haul. And so much of success comes from consistent action. Stay in it. It's like consistency over intensity. You stay in it, you play the long game, and eventually, over time, things start to add up. And that can only happen, that consistency can only happen if you remember your why. And so for me, it always comes back to traveling, being in Spain with my best friend with a head full of lice, and 2 shaved legs at that point, I assume. I, for the rest of my life, will always remember that trip. And all of the many, many, many other trips that I've taken with other friends and solo. And nothing will ever replace that. No other opportunity could ever, nothing compares. And so I'm so thankful that I never had to say, oh, geez, I would love to do that, but I can't afford it. And the reason that I didn't have to say that, again, comes from everything that we've just talked about, from being clear about your why, your priorities, and using that why to keep your head in the game so that you can stay consistent for the long haul. So, thank you.